many have come out stronger than ever. For a lot of them, the Legion feels like home. It's nice to be part of that.
This is Roger.
News in Ottawa, and this is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -3 degrees, -1 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. In fact, province-wide, it is the latest in the vaccine arsenal arriving today, a third weapon in this country's fight against COVID. City News reporter Jamie Pulford joins us with who stands to benefit most and why as we get set to roll up our sleeves for the AstraZeneca vaccine.
As of today, there's a new vaccine on the scene to take down COVID in Canada, with 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca shot arriving today. But there is a time crunch because more than half of those doses will expire in less than a month. And while Health Canada has approved the vaccine for all adults, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization recommends that it not be administered to people 65 and over. That's due to a lack of trial data. Now, the provinces are currently taking that advice, Ontario included.
That AstraZeneca vaccine only be administered to people between 18 and 64 years of age. Anyone over that age, it's recommended that they receive either the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine.
Health Minister Christine Elliott says an announcement about how the AstraZeneca vaccine will be used in Ontario will happen soon. At this point, she says it's a more versatile vaccine that can be used potentially in mass vaccination clinics and correctional facilities. In BC, top doctor Bonnie Henry says they plan to target younger people with this vaccine. I'm Jamie Pulfer.
City News Time, 9:01 now. The Prime Minister expected to give an update on this vaccine rollout today. It's also expected that Justin Trudeau will announce significant new funding for academic research in dozens of universities right across Canada, not necessarily pandemic related. Funding is on top of about $1 billion the feds have plowed into research, trying to keep scientists working on projects the government hopes will eventually help our economy rebound. Now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Quite a bit of cloud for most areas today. May get some more flurries, though, as we work through the afternoon. A mild high, though, +2, becoming mainly clear tonight. Will drop to -14. It's colder again. The high tomorrow just -6, but lots of sunshine tomorrow. For today, the high +2.
And right now it's -3 in Ottawa, -1 in Smiths Falls. It appears some long-term care homes in the province still violating COVID-19 safety rules. This is nearly 1 year into our pandemic. A CBC News data investigation revealed 1 in 12 long-term care facilities in Ontario were caught breaking infection prevention and control measures. That was between last June and January of this year. Provincial inspectors reported improper screening as a frequent issue at homes. Many are cited for not asking staff or visitors questions or taking their temperatures when they enter. A judge expected to deliver her verdict today in the case of the man who deliberately drove a van down Yonge Street in Toronto, killing 10 and injuring 16 others. Alec Manassian admitted to planning and carrying out that attack April 23rd, 2018. But he has argued he should not be found criminally responsible for his actions because he is autistic. Some structural damage reported after a magnitude 6.3 earthquake hit central Greece. Numerous aftershocks hit the area as well, including one with a magnitude of over 5. The mayor of one town, which lies just north of the epicenter, says the walls of old houses collapsed in nearby villages, and one village school was also damaged. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Any. Ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I'm officially sick of winter. I've reached that point. I'm done with you, winter. I'm sick of the cold. I'm sick of the snow. I'm sick of the salt and the slush and the slop. I want spring. I want spring. Spring officially arrives in 17 days. In 17 days, can't come soon enough. Good morning. This is the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News. We have a busy, busy program ahead for you. We are jam-packed between... Thank you once again for spending part of the day with us. We'll get into some local issues this morning. Marathon City Committee meeting yesterday for some of our city councillors, members of the FedCo Committee. That's the most powerful committee at Ottawa City Hall outside of the full city council. And it had a 12-hour meeting yesterday. Can you imagine? So you want to be a city councillor, do you? No. And one of the issues that really didn't go anywhere, they voted it down, is this whole idea that we should keep spending about $3,000 a month for families in residential units in Vanier, hotel rooms, basically. $3,000 a month. $3,000 a month. Can you imagine? To me, I've talked about this a lot in the past. Families, homeless families, that they are living in such accommodation. And it's not fair to taxpayers to spend that kind of money, $3,000 a month, for such shoddy accommodation. And yet it all went down in flames yesterday at this committee. You know what? Maybe some of these committee members, some of these city councillors, maybe they should move there. Maybe they should spend a month in one of these rooms in Vanier for $3,000 a month out of their own pocket. If it's such a great deal, why don't you do it? So we're going to get into that and much, much more. Councillor Catherine McKenney is going to be our guest this morning. She is the city councillor for Somerset Ward. And then a little later in the program, Ottawa Sun City Hall columnist Sue Sherring will join us to wrap up the show. Now, every morning here on the Rob Snow Show, we talk a lot about politics, of course, and every Wednesday morning we give you your political fix. We help you political junkies score your political fix. Cam Holmstrom, Kate Harrison, both on the show today. One's a lefty, one's a righty. I guess I'm stuck in the middle. My goodness, ladies and gentlemen, there's a big stuff on today when it comes to federal politics. Get a load of this. Get a load of this. There's a news story in this morning's Toronto Star, and I really need to get your take on this. Toronto Star, Canada's this morning that Conservative leader Erin Otoole, I can't believe I'm going to say this, Erin Otoole is thinking about embracing a carbon tax. I feel like we need a sound effect here, David. Dun, dun, dun! You know, something like that. Yeah, you heard that right. Conservative leader Erin Otoole thinking about embracing a carbon tax. Erin Otoole. Mr. True Blue, you remember those days? He once promised that if he ever became prime minister, he would get rid of Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. Get rid of it. Not create a brand new one, get rid of it. And now, according to this report in the Toronto Star, he's actually thinking about making it part of it. Exactly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of that? My friends on the right side of things, what do you think about that? The Conservative Party to Canadian voters a carbon tax. You know what? If you have an opinion on that, and I sure hope some of you do, we have the perfect avenue for you to express your opinion. We call it the Talk Back Hour, and we do it every morning between 10 show on City News, call-in radio, out of the old school. You call, I listen. Sometimes we get along just fine. Sometimes we debate the issues. Sometimes we even argue. but it's never boring. So let's get into this one this morning. Are you with me? At 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. The Conservatives and a carbon tax. The Rob Snow Show at ottawa.citynews.ca is my email address. The leader of the Conservative Party thinking about a carbon tax, Aaron Otoole. What do you have to say to Aaron Otoole? If indeed that is his plan. Conservatives and carbon taxes, to me, they just don't go together. Maybe that makes me a dinosaur. I don't know. This news story suggests that Aaron Otoole, whoever they are, they're thinking about this because they think it'll help them win seats in Ontario. And I get it, the party really needs to pick up some seats in Ontario. They're thinking whatever it costs the Conservative Party in the West, in Alberta and Saskatchewan, it'll be worth it because they'll win seats in Ontario. And as well, the thinking is this party's never going to get young people to vote for it as long as it doesn't have a carbon tax or some serious plan to fight climate change, get to net zero on carbon emissions by the year 2050. I'm skeptical about all of those claims. To be quite honest with you, I am skeptical about all of those claims. I think people will be calling for the leader of this party to resign. I am not kidding. If he plans to make a carbon tax part of the election platform. That is not what rank and file Conservatives voted for or thought they were voting for when they elected Aaron Otoole as the leader of the Conservative Party, that he would pull some kind of bait and switch like this. And I'm also not convinced that the federal Conservative Party needs to be running on a carbon tax in order to win seats in Ontario. The last time I looked, Doug Ford is almost 20 points ahead of the Liberals in Ontario right now. Doug Ford won a big majority government 2 years ago, and the same thing would happen if the election was today in Ontario. It would be the Ford Progressive Conservatives in a landslide. Doug Ford canceled Kathleen Wynne's cap-and-trade carbon tax scheme in Ontario. He canceled it. And he's still fighting the Trudeau carbon tax in court. And he's leading his by 18 points in the last poll, while the Aaron O'Toole-led Conservatives can barely crack 30% in the polls. I don't think you need a carbon tax to win an election. The Toronto Star story says there would be a revolt. You might be underselling it. But that's just me. What do you think? Let's get into that. Climate change, climate change, climate change. Never let a crisis go to waste. How many times have I said that this year? Never let a good crisis go to waste. And we are told every day now, climate change, the next big challenge for post-pandemic Canada. Well, I have some recommended reading for you today if you want to know what the big challenge, not only facing post-pandemic Canada, but facing Canada right in the here and now. The recommended reading today, if you're going to read one thing today, you should make it Leisha Corbella in the National Post, quickly becoming my favorite columnist. I'm planning to speak to this issue today with an epic rant. Corbella must have been reading my mind. Her column in the Post today is headlined, The Gray Wave. Used to call this the Gray Tsunami. being told climate change, the next big thing, the next big problem to solve, building back better, yada, 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 all of this stuff. It is obviously, it's an obsession for our political leaders, right? Fighting climate change. Now even apparently the Conservative Party of Canada is going full on climate change. The real crisis, my gosh, would you see the forest for the trees? The real crisis that needs to be solved in Canada is already here, has been here for years, is not going anywhere, is only going to get worse. It's health care. How are we ever going to afford health care because of the gray wave? Look around. We're getting older. Health care. Who uses the most health care? Older people. Healthcare is going to get a lot more expensive. How do you think we're going to pay Canada's long-term care system when the number of seniors triples in 20 years? All well and good to talk about building back better, spending $100 billion to get to net zero carbon emissions in 30 years. You may want to ask yourself, how are we going to afford our precious universal health care system in the same amount of time? This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to like the environment or to our bodies. We have like fun stuff, so like really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just like right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, probably we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, like in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was only, I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of like full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, or sorry, like online phone, text, any way I could do business. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, you know, we are fully set up online too.
World is changing.
So keep up with Rob
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Let's talk city business. Catherine McKenney is here, City Councillor, Somerset Ward, City Liaison, Housing and Homelessness. Good morning, Councillor.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. I hope you're well these days.
I am.
It's good. It was a long meeting yesterday.
That was a long meeting, yeah. Perhaps a bit tired.
That's one of the longer ones that I can remember. My goodness gracious, about 12 hours or so, I guess. So
yeah, over that, it was a long day. Lots of important stuff on that agenda yesterday.
I want to get into this idea that the city is spending thousands of dollars a month to house homeless families in places like the Tabor apartments. There was a move afoot to try and end this arrangement. I've been talking about this for years. I mean, $3,000 a month in some cases, Councillor McKenney. I've rented a lot of places in the city. I never rented a place for $3,000 a month. And if I did, it wouldn't be at the Tabor luxury apartments. I can tell you that right now. There's so many things wrong with this, and yet this committee didn't seem to go anywhere. Can you walk us through what happened yesterday?
Yeah, I can, Rob. Councillor Fleury and I, in December, actually brought a motion to Community and Protective Services to end the relationship, essentially, with Tabor. And, as you mentioned, the city also rents hotel rooms for families and has a relationship with several motels and hotels as overflow shelter. Tabor is a bit different in that it is an apartment building. So it could actually be on the long-term, on the market for long-term rental. But instead, we are paying the landlord. He's not really a landlord because these tenants don't have any tenant rights.
Well, they're not tenants, so he's not really a landlord.
Exactly, which is part of the problem. You have people living in an apartment that have absolutely no rights as tenants. And we started to hear, almost a year ago, really, some pretty horrendous stories about what was happening in terms of the mistreatment of people living there and the squalor that they were living in. And that was for, as you pointed out, at the time, close to $3,000 a month. So we want that relationship to end. When you talk about spending even $3,000 a month on a hotel and motel room, or $2,600 a month for the Tabor luxury apartments, that money could be better spent two ways. One, just housing allowance to get housing, get on their feet,
sure,
able to go out, get a job, and start to support themselves, because that's what people do when they're well housed. Or you could, divert some of that money to stop families from actually falling into homelessness in the first place, which we don't do enough of. We don't do enough of that upstream work where we prevent families and individuals from falling into homelessness. We let them fall in, and we spend thousands of dollars and destabilize them until they, until we find housing, which is very, very difficult.
So it just seems to me, the news reports say we have, under these arrangements with hotels, dorms, Tabor, whatever, we're trying to house about 370 families on an ongoing basis. Is that about right? Is that about right? Okay.
I believe it's about 370.
So I guess to me is, well, why hasn't the city done something like a tendering process? Put something out there saying we need a system to house on an ongoing basis, maybe for 4 months at a time, maybe for a year at a time, but on a continuing basis, a system that is in place to house temporarily 400 families of varying sizes. And then try to find, first of all, the best accommodation for the best price. Why wouldn't we do something like that?
Well, I would take it one step further.
Okay, all right.
That's called transitional housing. And transitional housing has got terrible outcomes for families, especially for children. If you move kids into in 6 months or a year and a half, they don't do well. We know that the outcomes are poor, and families don't do well because they're not settled. So my argument is always not transitional housing. Find housing for them. And I understand, and I'm not criticizing city staff who every day are out there looking for housing for families and for individuals.
Sure. Okay.
But and right now we need the overflow. There's nowhere else for these families to be. But the reason I could not support the plan that was put in front of us yesterday was I did not see the path for how we're going to get out of this. I see that in 10 years, we might not be worse off, but I don't see a path for where we're going to be a whole lot better off. And a lot of that depends on spending the money to ensure that people don't fall into homelessness, so that we're not spending exorbitant amounts on shelter, on transitional housing, on emergency housing, and then, healthcare costs and everything else that we know goes up with having people without housing.
Okay, I have a few more questions here. Where do you stand right now on the proposal for the Shepherds of Good Hope for 48 new units at 216 Murray Street of supportive housing? That's a project that's still looking for funding that could be part of this new 10-year plan.
Absolutely, and that is exactly what we need. That is exactly the type of housing that we need to move people out of shelter who are chronically homeless. Right. So if you're chronically homeless, likely you need supports to be able to become housed. You may have mental health issues, addiction issues, trauma. People coming out of long-term shelter need that supportive housing. So to build housing for people with supports is really the only way we're going to end chronic homelessness. We can also, however, there's two ways of doing it. One is aggregate housing, like what Sheps is building. John Howard is building in this ward housing for 29 women coming out of shelter. And we have examples of that work very well across the city. Or we can house them individually out in the market, private market, wrap supports around them. And again, it has been shown time and time again that people thrive. They are able eventually to seek employment, to go back to school,
they're stabilized. They're stabilized because they have the supports around them.
Their addictions become stabilized. Their mental wellness becomes, better. So absolutely, if we're going to end chronic homelessness, it is the only way to do it.
Okay, quick question. Gosh, I wish we had more time. I've lived in Ottawa more than 30 years now. When I first moved here, it was in the news that the housing registry, to get your name on a list for a unit, say in Ottawa Community Housing, had 10,000 names on it, and the wait was 10 years.
Yeah.
That was 30 years ago. Yeah. Okay? 1990.
Same today. It's worse.
It's worse now.
Yes.
It's like 13,000 names, and the wait is longer than 10 years. Like, could be as long as 12 years. Why have we made seemingly so little progress in all of this time? I mean, it's not like we haven't had plans or put money into it, Councillor.
No, you know what I say all the time? This fire was started a long time ago. In the early 90s, governments pulled out of housing. And by the time we realized, the trouble we were in, it was almost too late. And here we are today. And it is going to cost us to get out of it, but we're going to save when we get out of it. And when you think about the social housing registry, I always tell people to look at a different number. We have in this city 19,000 households who spend more than 50% of their income on rent. 50, 60, 70%. So those 19,000, many of them are on this social housing registry wait list, right? Because they can't afford where they live. we don't need to build new housing for these families. They're already living in adequate housing. They need help to rent. So if you take a household that, is on that wait list, is waiting for us to build housing, which is very expensive, and you say, look, what would it take to keep you in this house so that you don't lose it? Come off the wait list, $500, $800, we'll pay that. And then go on out and stabilize yourself. Go on out, you're no longer worried about paying your rent, about feeding your children, clothing your children. You are able again to have a more stable life. So we don't have to build housing for all. We do have to help them to get out of being at risk of falling into homelessness. So it's spending a little to save a lot.
All right.
It's actually so fiscally responsible.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Always great to hear from you. Have your perspective on things. Thanks again.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somerset Ward Councillor Catherine McKenney. Your political fix. After the news on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 13 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 3 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's -1. And here's what's making news this hour. The first 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine will arrive in the country today, but questions are swirling over its use. Health Canada authorizing the shot for adults, but the National Advisory Committee on Immunization is not recommending this for anyone 65 or older. But both agencies do agree it's preferable to give seniors the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine instead. A decision is coming today from the Transportation Committee on patios. Patio hours could be extended until 2 in the morning, right up until January of next year. Cafes allowed to seat up to 8 at a patio table where space permits, instead of a maximum of 4. That committee is just getting underway. In about a half an hour, the decision on the Alec Manassian trial will be delivered on YouTube. The judge in the case will rule whether he's guilty or not criminally responsible of killing and attempting to kill 16 others driving a van along Yonge Street sidewalk in Toronto in 2018. He has admitted to doing that, but feels he is not responsible for those 10 deaths because he has autism. That decision, once again, is going to be on YouTube starting at 10 o'clock. City News Time, 9:34. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Smith
TV and City News. 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix. Cam Holmstrom is here, consultant at Bluesky Strategies. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning, Rob.
Cam's more on the left side of things. Kate Harrison, Vice Chair Summa Strategies, more on the right side of things. Kate Harrison, good morning.
Good morning to you.
And as usual, I'm stuck in the middle, right in the mushy middle. Fair and balanced, okay?
That's right.
Political fix. Your political fix. Let's jump right into it. I'm going to have a lot to say about this. I hope my listeners have a lot to say about this when we open up our phone lines at 10 o'clock. A report in this morning's Toronto Star suggests Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole may be considering. Do you have our... A carbon tax, a Conservative Party carbon tax. Your immediate reaction upon reading that story, Kate Harrison.
Yeah, if he's going to do this, it's going to have to be messaged pretty delicately. You'll recall during the leadership campaign that McKay actually had accused O'Toole of trying to, I guess, sneak in or, have a carbon tax as part of the plan. He came out and said, no, I'm definitely not going to do that. I think two things can be true at the same time. The Conservatives do need a policy that makes sense on the environment. It suggests that what was put forward to voters in 2019 wasn't enough, particularly voters in Ontario. At the same time, people are really hurting right now, and we've had Conservatives across the country rail against a carbon tax that is too punitive on people, on commuters. And so trying to introduce a policy like that at a time when many people are struggling would be a very difficult thing to do. It also sends a message, perhaps to voters in the West, that, you might not have their priorities at heart. So what I would say is I think they are considering all options right now as far as environmental policy goes, this included. Anything that does come out on a carbon tax or a carbon price, whatever you want to call it, is going to have to be accompanied by some pretty strong conservative policies to help offset that. And so maybe that's an income tax cut. If you're going to be asking people to pay more at the pumps, you're going to have to put more money in their pocket one way or another. So I think it's a difficult thing for O'Toole to walk, but that's kind of the situation that he's in right now.
Okay. What do you think, Cam Holmstrom, a Conservative Party carbon tax? What do you think?
Oh, wow. That sound you hear in the background is a lot of chickens coming home to roost there, Rob. A lot of them have been building up over the last decade or so.
Okay.
I can't help but chuckle at this for two reasons. One was how Erin O'Toole rose to this position to become leader. He ran as one thing, this true blue conservative, trying to play the Trump light card, trying to be that guy, and then basically tried to go back to being who he was after he became leader, which is causing its own issues within the caucus. And when I read that Star story yesterday about issues in the caucus, I'm like, yep, I could see that coming because he sold one bill of goods and gave another. But also, this is over a decade of conservative communication and approach coming back to bite them. I still remember 15 years or so ago when we started having this debate about the price of carbon, and the debate back then wasn't yes or no to carbon pricing. It was, do we do cap and trade or we do a carbon tax? And a carbon tax is seen as the more market-oriented, more conservative solution to this, right? And once the Liberals kind of jumped onto that, the Conservatives decided, no, we can't be on that either. We can't be in the same spot. And we end up in the spot of it's nothing or nothing. And this is the problem we have now. Like, for Conservatives to be taken seriously, you have to have a genuine solution to this issue, which I've yet to see a way it can be done that does not involve a price on pollution in some way, shape, or form, no matter how you do it. And they have framed any kind of price on pollution as a carbon tax. So now you've wedged yourself into this corner, And now you realize the only way out is to crawl through all the crud you've built up over the last decade. It's not pretty. It's not nice. And yeah, this is part of a bet he's made for himself. And part of me is kind of heartened by the fact that he realized that okay, we need to kind of have this fight to get out. I wonder though if he's got the strength to do it, and if he actually has the will to do it. The grumblings in that caucus are real. And let's just face it, the history of that party is real when it comes to the elements of what might break away and might be upset. So been there, right? This is real trouble. But I mean, part of me just can't help but reflect on that, of how they got here. And really, at the end, is that this is what you get when the only solution you offer for over a decade is no.
Okay. I get the rationale behind it. You want to grow the party, right? You're not going to win an election with your base 30%. Those most loyal conservatives who are with you through thick and thin, the 30% of Canadians. And you want to get into the 35, 36, 37% support. If you want to win an election, you need seats in Quebec, you need seats in Atlantic Canada, you need seats in Ontario. How effective a strategy could this be? Kate, you pitch a carbon tax.
I think this is more of a shield issue than a sword issue.
Right. Okay.
I don't think that this is necessarily one that I don't know that you necessarily win votes by saying, "Hey, we're going to make things more expensive for you," right? I haven't seen seen that play out. Yeah. But at the same time, there is a contingent of voters out there, at least based on the polling that I've seen and polling that Abacus and others have done, that want to see at least a conservation-oriented policy towards the environment. So how you weave a carbon price. There's going to be some upset people. There's going to be some people that don't want to see anything happen on the environment. But the reality is there is a lot of middle voters that want to at least be assured that climate change is going to be dealt with in a meaningful way, so that might not be the issue they have to think about going to the ballot box, right? That's part of the consideration, but if conservatives can tick a box and assure people that there's going to be some meaningful action taken on climate change, then we can have conversations that the conservatives want to be having around the economy and other things. So I think that it's more about playing a little bit of defense. The other thing I would say is timing will matter here. The Liberals right before the end of last year bumped up their timeline for increasing the price of carbon by the ton. So that is definitely going to hurt industry. So perhaps looking at how that timeline could shift or change would be something that a conservative approach would look at a little bit differently, rather than trying to speed through a quote unquote green recovery without a whole lot of detail, but with a lot of dollar figures attached to it.
I don't know. I could see it backfiring in any number of ways. First of all, people just, Otoole has a carbon price plan, but they don't take it seriously anyway. Just because it seems that's how any conservative policy on the environment is met, both by their political opponents and in much of the Canadian media. They just don't take conservatives seriously on anything when it comes to the environment. And there could be an all-out revolt in the Conservative Party, especially in the West. If Western support, and this is certainly a theme in the Toronto Star story this morning, is we're willing to give up some support in the West if we can gain some seats in East Maritimes. Gosh, it might tear the party apart. These are some of the things that I think about, Kate.
This is probably I think this is the biggest policy question that conservatives have been struggling with for the last number of years. And you've got prominent conservatives like Preston Manning and others who have called for a carbon tax or a price on carbon for some time. Meanwhile, you've got Doug Ford, who one of his main three policies when he ran just 2.5 years ago was to get rid of the carbon tax. And there was a huge amount of public support for that, you'll recall. So this is a difficult thing to walk. I think how fast it would be implemented, what sort of offsets there would be in terms of making voters and consumers kind of whole for any increased prices that they may face. That's going to have to can't be, a copy of what the Liberals have done so far, which is just, you're going to pay more, but trust us, we're managing the money right, and this is in your best interest for the environment. It needs to be a different type of message for Conservatives to sell it. Okay,
before we stop here, I want to switch gears and go to the NDP. We had a recent poll, Leger Canadian Press poll, suggesting the NDP, 23% support nationally. Conservatives have dropped to 28%. So it would seem that whatever support is bleeding from the Trudeau Liberals, it seems to be going to the NDP. Why? What do you think is going on there?
I think that this is what I've been saying on your show now for months, Rob, is that people are wanting people to put the garbage aside and actually get results, get the job done. And I think that's what you're seeing the payoff from now, is that the NDP has been putting aside other self-interest and just going ahead and doing what needs to be done in this moment. And I think that's earned them respect. I think it's earning respect of voters that they're willing to do the right thing and put the politics aside. The other thing is that it's not that abnormal to see, frankly, Conservative votes go orange and vice versa. In the prairies, you see it quite often. In Northern Ontario, where I'm from, it's very common to see. It's people who work it's people who work in mills, people who work in factories west, even people who work in the oil patch, who care about their health care, who care about their social programs, but at the same time care about industry, right? There is that balance that's been there the whole time. Which is why you saw Aaron Otoole making that play for
and Doug Ford, and Doug Ford 2 years ago, did the same thing, right?
Even Rob Ford, when he was mayor of Toronto, you saw a lot of that crossover. Yeah. The thing is, I think most people have this stereotypical view of what an NDP voter looks like, and frankly, downtown Toronto NDP voter, which is far from being the coalition. This is one thing that I was always proud of when I worked in the party.
A lot of NDP voters, they wear work boots and not necessarily Doc Martens, is what you're saying.
Exactly. But seriously, when I worked in the NDP, this is something I was always proud of, is that you had a balance, a representation of downtown views, but you also had the rural view. It wasn't one versus the other.
Okay. I'd like you to weigh in on there is, swing voters and how often this actually happens. We have this idea. So I think some people have this idea that NDP supporters would never vote for the Conservative Party, or Conservative voters would never switch their vote from Conservative to NDP. But as Cam said, Kate, it happens, right? Voters swing between orange and blue because they don't want to vote for the Liberals, right?
For sure. And the other thing I would say is that a strong NDP is actually a good thing for the Conservative Party. So the vote switching it does happen. At the same time, you don't want so much vote switching that the NDP are weakened, which will then kind of see the Liberals still squeak out a win. But I think that there is a bit of in the same way that Conservatives have a big tent to manage, so does the NDP. They've got a lot of organized labor, but then they also have those that are on I'll call them the wokesters, that they have to appeal to as well. And those groups are often very, very different and might have different views on any number of topics. So they've got a big tent that they have to try and keep together as well, but it does lead to some bleed between the parties.
Okay. So look, when we come back, a little bit more on Aaron Otoole. He's very much in focus lately for a guy nobody seems to know. But recent polls say Aaron Otoole has, as I said, this Leger poll has him at 28%. His party's at 28%. Meantime, Doug Ford's at 44% in Ontario and would win another big majority government. Well, why is Ford doing well and Otoole just can't seem to lift off? We'll talk about that when we come back. Rob Snow Show, your political fix, here on City News.
I started at Lester's Barbershop, and it was kind of, it was one of those things that it was just an opportune time for me to get into it, just because he had decided that he was going to retire after the fire, and then the opportunity presented itself that I could open my own shop. And so I went from 150 square foot space on St. Patrick's Street to a 600 square foot space just on Beechwood to now here, and I'm in a 1,400 square foot space now. And I don't know, it's been an interesting journey because, you know, you think that you're just going to be just you or a really small space, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've got 10 other people working for you, you're in a much bigger space, and even incorporating the boutique. Last March, when all of this started, I mean, we closed down a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I'm going to say, you know, being honest, part of it was social pressure. We shut down before everybody else did, and I'm watching all these other salons, you know, just be really responsible and saying we don't want to be a part of the process. So we got ahead of it and closed, and then, you know, the week later, the government's like, everybody's shutting down. And so it was a little nerve-wracking. I guess the first step of us, you know, trying to innovate and just keep moving forward was when the salon is closed, right? It's like, what do you do? Our whole industry is based on being with people, cutting their hair, providing a service. You have to be people together to do that. You can't do that remotely at all. So one of the first things that I saw in our industry, what people were trying to do was they were selling their hair products that they had. And luckily, I've had a website that always had a web store in the back. I just never used it. So as soon as I saw that people were doing that, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to load up all my stuff. And so that worked out really, really well. And then from there, I managed to find a place that was like a wholesale website that allowed you to have net 60 days. So you don't have to, you can order all the stuff. You don't have to prepay any of it. There's free returns, all that. So that made it really easy for me to bring in other products and start trying to sell it. And so I went from selling hair products to shave products to bath and body products to a little bit of clothing and jewelry, and now it's just morphed into this whole, like, I want to make it a whole legit boutique. And by December of last year, I decided that this is a full-fledged thing and we're going to separate it. It's its own company. It's really finding an opportunity that's there and running with it. So it's been really fun. Our clients are loving it. Our clients that have been here for a long time, they love it.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
And 1310 AM.
Part 2, your political fix. Cam Holmstrom from Bluesky and Kate Harrison from Summa are with me today. Cam, recent polls suggest that the Aaron Otoole-led Conservative Party of Canada is trying to cling to 30% of the polls. Meantime, here in Ontario, Doug Ford has his Progressive Conservatives with an 18-point lead over the Ontario Liberals, 44% to 26%, according to a recent poll. So Ford appears, I mean, it's a long way to go until the next election, with 16 months, 18 months, something like that. Doug Ford, though, the election was today, big majority, 4 more years of Ford for the people. Why is Doug Ford doing so well in the polls while Aaron Otoole can't seem to catch on, Cam Holmstrom?
There's a lot of reasons that could chalk up to this. I'm going to point to the most obvious, and that's COVID. Just because before COVID, Doug Ford was crashing and burning in the polls because of his management of the province and the scandals and everything else. And it was the early days of COVID that helped spring him back up, and he really hasn't come down from that point yet. So that's where he is today. I'm not willing to be guaranteed that's where he'll be whatever election time comes after COVID is passed. But I think that's part of it. You've seen that bump for all governments, for most governments during COVID, where they've done a decent job of handling the situation. So I think that's part of it. Part of it as well is just, frankly, it's the Ford name. You know, just as Aaron Otoole, you know, gets benefits from certain parts of his caucus, the fact that Doug Ford is Rob Ford's brother, the fact that you have that base in Toronto to draw upon, that's something that federal Conservatives just don't have. You know, or at least they had it somewhat during the Harper years, but they don't have it right now, that's for sure.
It's a brand name in politics, Ford, right?
Exactly,
yeah.
Okay. Right. I think that plays into it as well. But also, let's just face it, there is a very normal tendency, historical tendency in this province, where you've had a federal government that's blue. And that's always been hard for whomever is on the other side of that to fight it. And I don't think Otoole has helped, given all the other issues he's dealing with. That's just one natural one that's in the way as well.
Okay. Kate Harrison, what do you think?
Doug Ford is the top dog and Erin O'Toole is the opposition leader. I think that to me is the most obvious one. I would not expect an opposition leader, let alone one that's only been in the chair for 6 months, to have the same popularity as an already pretty popular premier who, to Cam's point, whose popularity has grown because of COVID, because many incumbents' popularity has increased during this time. So I don't think that this is as much about issues as it is about circumstance. So what I would say is that O'Toole does need to start thinking about the conservative vision and policies, and maybe part of that is carbon tax. Maybe I hope it needs to be communicated over the course of the next weeks and months, so people start paying a little bit more attention to him. You're never going to get the same attention as an opposition leader as you would if you're the sitting premier or prime minister, what have you. But at the same time, there's been a lot of good focus on vaccines and the criticism that can go the Liberals' way, but it's time to start proposing ideas and not just opposing whatever the government's putting out.
And we would do this, right? If we, yeah. Gotcha. What are this week's odds of an election before Canada Day, do you think, Kate? What do you think?
I still personally think that an election is very probable this spring.
Right.
I mean, I do think that there's two things I'd flag that may throw it off.
Yeah.
One would be the debacle in Newfoundland.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to see how the pandemic election has played out there. Not very good. I know the House of Commons committee also said we shouldn't go to an election right now, while the House of Commons committee also recommended that the treatment of the Uyghurs be called a genocide, and that didn't really matter to the government. So I'm not sure how much stock they're putting into House of Commons committees. But the other part is the increase in popularity for Yves-François Blanchet in Quebec. Up almost double digits over the Liberals. That is not a situation that is going to make the BQ, or is going to make the Liberals pull the plug.
Those are not winning conditions. Okay.
Not winning conditions there. Vaccines, though, have improved, right?
Yes.
So they're increasing their shipments. That could embolden the Liberals to try and pull the plug early, maybe ahead of May, because if the U.S. is going to have everybody done by then, I think a lot of Canadians are going to say, oh, wait a minute, where's my jab? So I would put exact odds. I still think we're 60-40 yes to an election.
60-40 yes
spring.
before Canada Day. Cam doesn't think it's going to be until the fall anyway, at least the last time we spoke. Cam, you still sticking to that?
I absolutely am sticking to that, and I can see the government wanting to go before Canada Day, but the only way it's going to happen is if they pull the plug themselves. Because Jagmeet Singh's made it clear he's not taking the government down. I don't think Erin O'Toole wants to take the government down right now, so it's not going to happen through a vote in the House. The only way it's going to happen is if Prime Minister Trudeau takes a walk across the lawn at Rideau Cottage to whomever, and
whoever's there,
or maybe go to the Supreme Court and
talks to the gardener and says, "Hey, do you have the ability to call the election?"
Pretty please. But to me, that's the only way it's going to happen. And when it comes to the vaccine piece, they're going to be ahead of schedule, and maybe there are increased odds that they might send vaccines to us over the summer. I don't know why he wouldn't wait till the end of the summer when all of a sudden maybe you get ahead of schedule because all of a sudden you've gotten more vaccine to vaccinate people. Like, wouldn't that be a good campaign launch bill to say we've gotten everyone vaccinated before the start of September? Now let's go in the recovery. Like, I don't know why you don't wait the few months for that if that's possible.
Okay. All right. Great analysis this week. Great to talk to both of you. Thank you so much. Very satisfying.
Likewise. Have a good morning.
Yep.
Take care.
Political Fix with Cam Holmstrom and Kate Harrison. I'm Rob Snow. This is City News.
W1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 3 degrees. It's minus 1 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Our battle against COVID-19 is approaching 1 full year already. A third weapon in the country's vaccine arsenal also arrives today. City News reporter Jamie Pulfer with who stands to benefit the most from the AstraZeneca shot.
There's a new vaccine on the scene to take down COVID in Canada with the shipment of 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. But there is a time crunch because more than half of those doses will expire in less than a month. And while Health Canada has approved the vaccine for all adults, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization recommends that it not be administered to people 65 and over. The province that advice, including Ontario.
Only be administered to people between 18 and 64 years of age. Anyone over that age, it's recommended that they receive either the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine.
Health Minister Christine Elliott says an announcement about how the AstraZeneca vaccine will be used in Ontario will happen soon. She says it's a more versatile vaccine that can potentially be used in mass vaccination clinics and correctional facilities. I'm Jamie Pulfer.
We are getting more information about the rollout of vaccines locally. Over half the officers in the Ottawa Police Service will be among the first to receive the vaccine. 800-person force will be included in a Phase 1 rollout in Ottawa. Now, the province says officers were included as they provide regular emergency medical care as part of their duties. The first of the officer shots will be delivered today. The timeline is based on vaccine supply for the entire 800 officers in Ottawa who tested positive so far for COVID. City News Time, 10:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Quite a bit of cloud for most areas today. May get some more flurries, though, as we work through the afternoon. A mild high, though, +2, becoming mainly clear tonight. Will drop to -14. It's colder again. The high tomorrow just -6, but lots of sunshine tomorrow. For today, the high +2.
And right now in Ottawa, -3. In Smiths Falls, it's -1 degree. There are serious challenges to finding affordable or even reliable childcare, with parents being forced to cut back work hours or stay at home altogether. Our Ash Kelly telling us this morning a new poll shows about 70% of Canadians believe the federal government should be investing more in affordable options.
Derek Baines searched high and low for childcare options for his nearly 2-year-old, but even with time and money at his disposal, he landed on about 40 wait lists.
No matter how much people said, it's challenging, you don't really get it. Really work properly. If you don't have that flexibility, I don't know how you do it.
Baines settled on a small unlicensed daycare, but later pulled his son out because of safety concerns. He's now found a solution, but a new Angus Reid poll shows a quarter of stay-at-home families asked say they can't afford childcare outside the home, while 12% are split on solutions, with half saying funding should go directly to parents and half supporting a subsidized model such as $10 a day childcare. I'm Ash Kelly.
City News Time at 10:04. Pope Francis is traveling to Iraq on Friday this week in the hopes of encouraging a dwindling number of Christians violently persecuted during the Islamic State group's insurgency. Francis will seek to boost the ties with the Shiite Muslim world. Nicole Winfield telling us this morning officials are worried about security, though, as well as the pandemic.
Pope Francis is going ahead with his trip to Iraq this weekend. That's despite a rise in coronavirus infections and a new spate of rocket attacks targeting the American presence in the country.
Now, Francis' visit is the culmination of 2 decades of efforts to bring a pope to the birthplace of Abraham, the prophet central to Christian, Muslim, and Jewish faiths. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
A conservative carbon tax. 750-1310. 750-1310. Oh, it's worth repeating once more. A conservative carbon tax. Why don't we start right there this morning? A conservative carbon tax. What if, ladies and gentlemen, listeners right down to the Rob Snow Show, what if Aaron Otoole entered the next election campaign pitching to you a carbon tax? What would you think? A conservative government putting a price on carbon. Hey, why don't you go one step further and just call it a price on pollution? It works for Trudeau. What would be your reaction to that, ladies and gentlemen? You must have some reaction to that. The Toronto Star with the big scoop this morning. Headline: Will Aaron Otoole embrace a carbon tax? Some of his MPs are worried he will, insiders say. None of these insiders are actually named. All the insiders don't. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Gosh, there's so many ways to go at this story, but I want you to have your say. Look, it could be just a trial balloon, what they call in politics a trial balloon. It could just be this struggling opposition leader leading this party, looking to change its fortunes in the polls. What can we do? What can we say? What might work? Why don't we float this idea and see how it goes over? See if this does the trick. Let's say, what if we had a carbon tax? Well, I'll play your silly game. If that's what they're trying to do, look, I know a lot of you. You bleed blue, right? You support the Conservative Party. You donate to the Conservative Party. You put the lawn signs on the lawns come election time. You don't like the Liberal Party. You'd love to see the backside of Justin Trudeau. Well, then, what do you think of this idea? Aaron Otoole offers you a carbon tax. 750-1310. Email therobsnowshow@ottawa.ca. Next, brought to you by the Conservative Party of Canada. This is what it says in the Toronto Star this morning. Quoting here. Multiple sources told the Star that Conservative MPs are in the dark about how the party will actually on climate change without introducing carbon pricing, a policy that has been long vilified by Conservatives. It continues, quote, "It's widespread," said one party source when asked about concern among Conservative MPs that Otoole will pitch a carbon pricing scheme. The worry among certain elements within the Conservative caucus is that he is preparing to abandon the province to do away with the carbon tax, the source said, adding that Otoole has been more nuanced on the issue since becoming leader. Another source said the concerns are not limited to caucus and that there would be a revolt within the party's Conservative base if Otoole proposes any kind of carbon tax. Well, I'm always up for a good revolution. I would like to hear if there's going to be a revolt this morning when you call me during our talkback hour right now. I mean, is that true? I mean, would you revolt? Would you be revolted? Would you revolt against the party? Maybe just not that you're going to rush into the arms of Justin Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh or suddenly vote for the Green Party, but maybe you'll just kind of sit this one out, this upcoming election, and just not vote. Could happen, I guess. I'm really curious to know your thinking on this. The ever-changing, always evolving Aaron Otoole. That's what some people will say. They'll say, look, we elected this guy because he said he wasn't a fan of the carbon tax and would never have a carbon tax. That if the Conservatives form government, he'd get rid of the carbon tax, not keep the Liberal carbon tax, and certainly not create a brand new, made in Conservative carbon tax. Read my lips, no carbon tax. And yet, look at me now. The new Aaron Otoole, just months potentially from being plunged into an election campaign he does not want. We have this scoop from the Toronto Star, which bills itself as Canada's most widely read newspaper and maybe Canada's online casino. The Toronto Star. The Conservative leader thinking about a carbon tax. Well, what if he did? What would you think about that? How would you react to that? I would like to take a few phone calls on this issue. At 750-1310, 750-1310. $1.24 a liter at the Esso around the corner. I'm paying quite enough for gasoline. Thank you very much. Scott in Kempville, good morning.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Well, I'm curious to know what people's reaction is to this one, sir. What if Aaron O'Toole said, vote for me and you get a carbon tax?
Well, I just think of Patrick Brown in the province of Ontario.
Yeah.
He mentioned that and he was gone.
Yeah.
And if this fellow who I would have preferred Pierre Poilievre.
Sure.
But he's ex-military. I'm ex-military. My son's in the military. I know a lot of smart people that can get things done. But if he goes this route, I think he's gone. You can't. And as you said, he said doesn't support the carbon tax. He's certainly not going to be a friend. I think Jason Kenney actually supported him.
Oh, yeah. Jason Kenney said you can't vote for Peter MacKay. Peter MacKay's too wishy-washy, too in the middle. You have to vote for Aaron O'Toole. He's true blue. He's one of us kind of thing, you know?
This is what bothers me about Conservatives. And I'm a Conservative and proud to say. But, many times, except under the strong leadership of Stephen Harper, certainly if we had Stephen Harper, we wouldn't be in this mess now, but that's another story.
Well, we wouldn't be talking about a Conservative Party having a carbon tax. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we'd be getting vaccinated. But, no, I just think that Conservatives always seem to do this. You know, we are, as you mentioned, we're getting ready for an election. I haven't seen anything on Twitter this morning that Otoole has said, well, that's not. And, we just shoot ourselves in the foot. Like, this is a great opportunity, and I hate to be political in a pandemic, but everything is politics, it seems, these days. And there's a reality here, folks, that if we don't get our act together in the Conservative Party, this guy's going to win. He'll have a majority, and all these nut-brain ideas of his are going to be implemented. I think we've all had enough. I know I have of Justin Trudeau. But if people don't see a strong alternative, and that doesn't seem to be there right now, and there's this infighting, things don't look good. So I'll see today if he actually denounces that. So, I never see that.
Yeah. There's nothing to it. Nothing to it.
There's nothing to it.
Yeah. Okay.
But if there is something to it, he's gone.
He's gone. All right. Okay. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. Yeah. If you cheer for the blue team like Scott, I'd love to hear from you this morning. Even if you don't. That's why we do the Talkback Hour, to gather all kinds of opinions. Find out what way people are leaning on the hot issues of the day. Considering a carbon tax, according to reports, insiders say. If that's really the case, what would you say to Aaron O'Toole if he was standing right in front of you? Are you crazy, man? What would you say? Go for it. Great idea. It's about time. You fight against the climate emergency. Or there is no way in heck I will ever vote for you. You should step down as leader of the Conservative Party if you think you're going to run on a carbon tax. Or maybe you're somewhere more, what's the word? Nuanced. Right, yeah. Jurgen, good morning, sir. You're on the air. What do you think? What do you think of this one?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hear you just fine, sir.
Okay, good. I am a staunch Tory supporter, and I never liked the carbon tax. Politically, there's a lot of Tories who wouldn't support it, but in the end, I think everybody has to realize climate change is here. There are things going on. We need money to take care of it and do something about it. And if Trudeau has his ways right now with many of his ideas he's implemented about climate change and where he's getting the money from, if O'Toole happened to win the next election, which I really don't think is going to happen right now, I think, like many other people, I think Trudeau is going to win because of the COVID-19 situation. He'll probably look like a champion. But if that happens, would Aaron O'Toole want to take away all the changes that have already been implemented and the money that's coming into the government? So, and how many people would he actually be saying, people look at him going, hey, yes, maybe I'm a liberal, maybe I'm a centrist liberal, maybe I'll go blue, because now they are going the climate change way.
So you think it could be a winner? You think it could be a winner?
Yeah, I think he could get some political support.
Votes.
I really do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, I think that's his thinking as well, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So 2 calls right there. 1, okay, maybe not a bad idea. 1, no freaking way. Aaron Otoole, thinking about a carbon tax. What do you think about that? On the Talk Back Hour, Rob Stowe Show, City News.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our 2nd generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. And in the early days, it was pretty critical. It hit us really hard. Stores were closed. We weren't sure what to do, so we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed, and with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck, being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online. And the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest. Where we were lucky once again is, and fortunate, is at our product offering. Work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it. What we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This is website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it, you can check the on hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. Go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it loved it and want to use it again.
Back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Of course, we're following everything that's happening in Toronto. Our giant sister station there, 680 News, all over the Manassian verdict, which in this hour is being delivered right now, following the trial on the perpetrator of the Toronto van attack. The verdict being read now, but we do not have the final verdict just yet. But as soon as we know, we'll interrupt and bring that to you. Meantime, it's our Talkback Hour. We have a hot issue for you this morning, conservatives and carbon taxes. Look, according to the Toronto Star, Aaron Otoole is thinking about embracing the carbon tax. And I guess the thinking is, according to the story, you can understand it. The party needs to stuck at 30% of the polls right now. And Otoole has been on this mission to try and broaden the appeal, build a coalition of voters. And the belief is not having a carbon tax policy means the Conservatives are just writing off millions of votes, especially younger voters who might be willing to give the Conservative Party a look if the Conservatives were only more serious about fighting climate change. And I guess the thinking goes it's about gaining seats where you really need to gain seats in Ontario, especially Ontario. And the Conservative Party just needs to stop being beholden to Western Canadian politics, the politics of the oil sands. I guess that's part of the strategy. If Otoole is really thinking about this at all, maybe the rationale is we're going to win the West anyway. And if we pitch a carbon tax, we'll have a better shot of picking up seats in Ontario too. And if we do well in Ontario, we can win it all. Strong, stable majority Conservative government. I think they're dreaming in Technicolor if that's actually what they're thinking, but apparently that might be part of what they're thinking. To Lauren Yell, Nicola.
Hi.
What do you think if Erin O'Toole had a carbon tax? What would you think?
Well, if I was the West, I would be so mad. Like, we just had Trudeau at that press conference in the States saying that he's moving forward from the XL pipeline, too bad Alberta,
Yeah.
I'm a voting delegate for the convention coming up, so if he does this, I'm going to raise hell, that's for sure.
Yeah, raise hell. Okay, for the policy convention later this month.
That's right, yeah.
Just in a few weeks there, yeah.
Anyway, if they wanted to appeal to Toronto, like Ford, they should have elected Leslie Lewis, but they didn't do that, unfortunately. He was more proactive, this whole thing about the vaccine contracts that are not being published. Like, all the other G7 leaders have published the contracts. I don't know why he doesn't attack them, like have a hashtag Trudeau transparent or Trudeau published contracts, something to get a movement on that. Yeah,
okay.
He's very vulnerable on that. It's Achilles' heel, I think.
Right. Okay. Not doing enough to attack the Liberals on their performance with the vaccines and COVID-19 and those transparency. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you would feel betrayed, right?
I certainly would. Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Nicola.
Okay.
Yep,
thank you. Bye.
Yep. Thank you, Eric. What do you think, Eric? If the Conservatives pitched a carbon tax in the upcoming election?
Rob, up until about early last fall, I would have been pulling my hair out. But I read an information piece by I'm not sure I pronounce the issue, Ken Boscool. He makes a case actually for Canadian carbon tax. He asked the question, what if a shift to carbon taxes could meet Conservative goals of taxing consumption, flattening taxes, and slowing the growth of government? And then he went in and addressed each one of those issues. And he made actually a fairly solid argument on all those cases. So when I hear that he's contemplating it, I'm not ready to light my hair on fire. Okay. But I think he needs to get out and define what he's talking about in terms of carbon tax before the Liberals get out and do it for him.
Okay.
So I think it's good that that information has gotten out. I think it needed to be out there. He was not going to be picking up any more folks in the big blue tent, sticking to the old ways. So I'm
You're open to hearing it.
I'm absolutely open to hearing it.
All right. Okay.
I think on the surface, it sounds reasonable. When you take a look at the current system, essentially you got two streams. You got a stream for the regular folks, you and me, and you got a stream for the big polluters. The big polluters, irrespective of what they do, get right off the top. They get an 80 or a 90% rebate back from anything that they pay, where we get some paltry sum of, I don't know what it is, $200 or $300, which is nowhere close to what I'm paying in terms of carbon tax. So I'd be open to hear how he wants to bring carbon tax in to lower the tax burden generally, and to further the cut down of government.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Okay. Thank you. Okay. He's at least open to hearing the idea. There you go. 750-1310, 750-1310 on a Conservative carbon tax. West End. Debbie, good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
What do you think, Deb?
Not too much. I don't. I was kind of really blindsided this morning when I started hearing this, and It's not that I'm not open. I'm open to hearing any ideas from anybody about anything.
Okay.
However, that's not how, as a voting delegate in electing a leader, I chose who I was going to vote for.
Right.
So I'm kind of not very happy about everything. And
you feel like he, if this comes into being, and look, it's one story in the newspaper, but if it comes to pass, you'll feel like you were misled.
I feel very much like I was misled, and I'll probably just sit this one out.
Sit it out, yeah.
And those letters that come looking for money, and those phone calls,
yeah.
Well, just won't answer the phone, and the letters can just go in the garbage, because I'm not supporting anybody that can't tell me the truth.
Okay. Thank you, Debbie.
So I can't vote for anybody else, so
right.
I can't vote Conservative, then I just got to sit out.
Okay, Debbie, thank you. Thank you.
Rob.
Okay, yep. A couple of minutes left here. Prince of Wales area. Yvonne. Yvonne?
Yes. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. What would you think if Aaron Otoole pitched voters on a carbon tax in the upcoming election?
Listen, I agree what you just said before you took the last few callers and what Eric just said. This is something we need to listen to. And besides, if you don't vote, that's not right. And who else are you going to vote for if you're against the carbon tax? Everybody wants a carbon tax.
Oh, I don't want a carbon tax. Do you want a carbon tax?
No, I mean all the other parties.
All the other parties, sure. So
right? So who are you going to vote for if we go with a carbon tax? Who are you going to vote for? Sit out.
Okay.
And the other thing is, what Eric said depends how he.
It depends on how he does it.
Yes.
Okay. It's in the details. All right.
We need to listen.
Yeah.
And if we want the Conservatives to win, we got to vote Conservative.
Okay. All right.
If you don't vote, you're giving a vote to the Liberals.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So we've almost hit halftime. I mean, keep in mind, folks, there are upstart populist parties in the West to think about as well, right? The Wexit parties. This could send some voters their way. If Western voters wanted a carbon tax, they'd be voting for the Liberals, for crying out loud. If the idea is to pick up seats in Ontario, well, Doug Ford has a 20-point lead over the Liberals in Ontario, won the last provincial election in a landslide, would repeat that performance in a provincial election if it was today. Doug Ford has been fighting the Trudeau carbon tax pretty much since canceled Kathleen Wynne's carbon tax. Where is the evidence that voters in Ontario are somehow craving a carbon tax? But there it is. In print, Canada's most widely read newspaper and soon-to-be newest online casino, the Toronto Star, has the story Aaron Otoole might pitch you a carbon tax, sources say. Back after the news on City News.
for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 3 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 0. And here's what's making news this hour. The latest COVID-19 numbers in our province show a drop below 1,000 new cases today. There are 958 from just over 52,600 completed tests. There have also been 17 additional deaths. Of the new cases in Ottawa, 57, 8 more in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 5 more in Renfrew, 13 more in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. Health Canada's chief medical contradiction between her department and the National Advisory Committee on Immunization regarding the newly approved Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Dr. Supriya Sharma says both agencies agree that where possible, it's preferable to give seniors the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines. They have been proven effective in guarding older people against COVID-19. Alec Manassian's sentencing is being delivered right now and over YouTube. The judge in the case going through events leading up to the rampage in a rented van down Yonge Street in Toronto in 2018. The judge also listed off the people injured and the extent of their injuries in detail. The judge is still reading her decision. We'll have the latest for you coming up at 11 o'clock. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
A Conservative Party offering a carbon tax as part of an election campaign. Wrap your head around that this morning. Taking calls on that this morning. Toronto Star says Erin Otoole is pondering a carbon tax as a pitch to more moderate voters, people who might be willing to switch, say, from the red team to the blue team, or even from the orange team to the blue team. But right now they can't bring themselves to do that because the blue team doesn't have a tax. That's what we're taking calls on. All right, just a minute here. We have an update out of the Manassian trial. David has been following this by way of our sister station, 680 News in Toronto. David, what is the latest there?
The decision has just been handed down. It is guilty.
Alex Manassian guilty.
Guilty. That is correct. Yes, guilty.
Okay.
That was
so the choices were guilty or not criminally responsible. Remember, his defense was that he was not criminally responsible because of his autism. The verdict is just coming in now. The judge has not accepted that, and Alec Manassian guilty of the Toronto van attack. So our next newscast comes up at. This is the Rob Snow Show, Talkback Hour. Back to our phone calls on our topic of the day, the Conservative carbon tax. Steve in Munster. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Rob. Listen, before I say anything, I'd like to say that my wife and I have enjoyed listening to you since your reincarnation last January.
I thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Anyway, I tend to agree with Eric and others that maybe we should reconsider the carbon tax. Don't forget, 70% of Canadians vote for parties that support a carbon tax. So, perhaps we can make it lower and pledge to eventually eliminate it. And I think Otoole's got to emphasize that we can use the funds for, innovation. Let's face it, oil is going to be needed for several decades. So let's help the oil industry and to decrease emissions. Oil is going to be a source of wealth needed for healthcare and social programs. And, it'd be nice to help Alberta for a change, and that would maybe get their votes. We should also think about maybe development of hydrogen as a fuel, and we should also have more construction of nuclear plants and research into dealing with nuclear waste. Don't forget, 70% of France's electricity comes from nuclear, and they got the lowest electricity costs in Europe. So that's what I have to say about it.
You want to see the details, though, Steve? Right. You want to see the details of the plan.
Exactly.
Right.
I don't think we should sell. So don't forget
All right.
if the Star is going to say something negative about it, then we should be really looking into details.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Steve, and thank you for those kind words.
Thank you.
Yep. 750-1310, 750-1310. According to a report in the Toronto Star, Aaron O'Toole's thinking about a conservative. Regan, what do you think, sir?
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
I think not.
I think not. Okay. All right.
Not.
Hard no for you. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. At first, I was thinking it should be. Yeah, I'm open to discussion, but I voted for Aaron O'Toole on the ballot, and that's not what I voted for. Too many other ways you can reduce your carbon footprint without taxing us. And if you were to go to tax, then you better cut a bunch of programs equivalent to the tax you're bringing in. So
okay.
Absolute no.
Right. So if you want to bring in a carbon tax, then you have to cut the federal portion of the HST, or you have to cut my income tax, or something like that, or whatever. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Call
Okay.
Carbon
Okay.
gone. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Sharon in Bell's Corners. What would you think of a conservative carbon tax?
Not much.
Not
Absolutely
much.
not.
Okay.
I didn't
All right.
vote for
Thank
Aaron
you.
O'Toole for the leader. I voted for Peter MacKay.
You did? Okay.
But he did not. Aaron O'Toole didn't say he was going to bring in a carbon tax. And why would I vote for a conservative if he wants to act like a liberal?
Okay.
That, it just drives me nuts. How do you differentiate yourself? Doing the same thing. We don't need more tax. Surely to God, we're all taxed heavily enough in this country. And what has really helped with the carbon tax? Has it really cut emissions? I think the answer is no. It's just a tax on a tax on a tax. That's what governments like to do. There needs to be, if they need to cut emissions, I'm not a real, into the climate change stuff anyway, but if people really do think something needs to be done, then, do something to fix the problem without always trying to. Well, they need to come up with, with a different plan. And I don't think either we should be paying for people to develop electric cars and, and paying them to get electric cars and all this
The
stuff.
subsidies.
If, in fact, there is a need, for this stuff, and there probably will be down the road, not now because the technology isn't here yet, then private industry should be developing that so they can make money down the road. Don't always look to the taxpayer. That's what Trudeau loves, of course, because give more money out so he can get reelected. But I don't think the Conservatives looking at a carbon tax is going to help them one bit. We're already ticked off with them not being able to capitalize on all the screw-ups Trudeau has. How can you be so far below Trudeau with all he's done in the last year? So it boggles the mind. So I would be very not sure. To be honest, I don't like the idea of sitting out an election, but I'm not sure I'd vote for them if they become liberals.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Yep. If you're just joining us, if you've just tuned in, the late-breaking news this morning, Alec Manassian has been found guilty of 10 counts of first-degree murder, 16 counts of attempted murder for perpetrating the Toronto van attack. The judge declaring and ruling that Manassian's autism spectrum disorder did not impair his ability to understand that his actions were morally wrong. More on that coming up during our 11 o'clock newscast here on City News. Back to the carbon tax story that the Toronto Star has this morning. Aaron O'Toole potentially about to embrace a carbon tax. The word used in the Star headline, embrace. Joanne Orleans, good morning, Joanne. What would you think of that?
Well, I'd just like to comment on the trial. I think what a victory for people who have autism and for their parents, that there was a proper understanding of the limits of the disease or whatever disorder, and it doesn't include that you become a murderous fiend. So I'm very relieved for them.
So am I. Yeah.
So you have a caller who previously mentioned Trudeau's Achilles heel, and I like that expression. I personally think his Achilles heel is that the man has been caught in so many lies. His hypocrisy has been uncovered, and these lies and this hypocrisy is provable simply by using quotes and various headlines. It's not manufactured. It's just anyone who's paying attention to the news. So when I hear what you're saying about Otoole and is it a trial balloon or not, we can only hope. I think that this would go to Otoole's honesty and completely undermine the possibility that he would have of using Trudeau's deceit and hypocrisy against him. Otoole would cede the upper ground that he has. This is no small thing that when our Prime Minister says something, he's usually doing something else. When he he grossly underdelivers. And frankly, I don't really know why in communication the tagline isn't always, but do you believe him? And if Otoole goes forth with this, he loses that capacity, but then his own base wouldn't believe a word that came out of his mouth.
Right, yeah.
Now,
yeah. You said you were true blue.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
My family ranges in age from 19 to 30, and with significant others, it goes to 40. I have a married son with 2 kids and a dog, and I have a child in second-year university just finishing up. And I can assure you that the only thing that's top of mind in that generation is not that we're all going to melt or freeze to death.
Right.
It's concern for a good job, landing on your feet so you can pay off your student loan, whether it's move out of the house or buy a car. All these things are top of mind, a good job. And close second is what you've been harping on for a long time, and that's housing.
Yeah.
Those are the actual things that motivate voters. There's no shortage of issues. So Otoole wagering his reputation on a political bet like this, I think, is political suicide because conservatives don't get the wide berth that liberals do. Obviously, Trudeau can continue to lie and underdeliver, overpromise, misrepresent, et cetera, he gets a free pass. But the second thing to keep in mind is no matter what the polls are saying, the truth is I don't think for the individual voter that it's climate change. I think it comes down to a very personal, can I get on my own 2 feet and get ahead?
Yeah. Well, I think, and I thank you, Joanne. Licia Corbella in the Post today is a must-read on healthcare. I hope to get into that at some point today. We'll see if we have the time. But we're on carbon taxes right now. Kate, Ottawa. Kate, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
What would you think if Erin O'Toole said, Kate, vote for me and I'll give you a carbon tax?
I would be very disappointed. I am a card-carrying conservative, and since Erin O'Toole has come into power in the party, I'm second-guessing who to vote for at all. Oh, and I have voted in every municipal, provincial, and federal election since I was 18 years old, and now Erin O'Toole has me second-guessing where to vote. And I don't even know, I think I might even not vote if he decides to do a carbon tax. What he did to Derek Sloan, whether you like Derek Sloan or not, was very sneaky and conniving, but I was willing to let it slide.
Okay.
If he brings in a carbon tax, there is no way I'm voting for him. And I really, really hope Pierre Poilievre is listening, and I hope that he runs for leadership the next time, because there is no way that Justin Trudeau would beat Pierre Poilievre. I don't know anyone that in the Conservative Party that wouldn't want him as leader, except for maybe Erin O'Toole.
Okay.
But, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Yeah. Reminds me of that Taylor Swift song. Remember that song? We are never, ever, ever getting back together. Remember that?
It's a terrible song.
Oh, I love that song. It's very catchy.
It's not. We don't need to revisit that.
Rick in Canada. Rick.
Yeah, Rob,
carbon tax.
I'm a bit concerned here because I don't think this discussion about carbon tax, not this discussion, but talking about it in general, is really in the realm of reality.
What do you mean?
Well, because the Trudeau government already admitted, and some of the key ministers in the news, that through bringing additional people to Canada, our carbon emissions are going to go up much more than what the carbon tax would reduce.
Okay. This is not the issue that I'm on today. What would you think if Aaron Otoole brought in a carbon tax, sir? It's a very basic question for you, Rick.
Yeah, understood. And I disagree with him bringing in the carbon tax. And I'm not political. I vote for the party that I think is going to manage our finances in a responsible manner. So I disagree with him bringing in the carbon tax. And he would have to show me, before I would reconsider, how we're actually net every year bringing down our carbon, no matter what other factors impact on our carbon footprint.
Okay, thank you. Let's take one more before we have to stop here for the final quarter. James.
Hey, are you going to
James.
more Taylor Swift for us or what?
I'm going on tour, James. You wait for it, buddy.
It sounds much better in FM.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. What would you think if Aaron Otoole said, vote for me and I'll give you a carbon tax?
I kind of swore off voting blue a long time ago. I'm sorry, but the one thing I think we need to remember is a carbon tax always will be downloaded to the consumer.
Sure.
Any kind of environmental tax. There's an environmental tax on tires that was supposed to be just paid for by the tire manufacturer, Canadian Tire or whoever, and you just pay that now. There's an environmental levy. If you buy a TV, they assume that you're throwing out an old TV, and so you have to pay an environmental levy. It was never meant to be charged to the consumer, but they got around it, and there it is. So the carbon tax absolutely will be picked up by the consumer. The corporations will not pay for it, not a penny. So being that the consumer is going to be the one paying for it, I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea, but if you're paying for something, you should know how it's going to benefit you. So if I'm paying extra every time, if I gas up, I'm paying extra on the carbon tax.
Sure.
I want to know, where's that money going and how is it going to benefit me? Maybe not now, obviously not now, but in the future. And that's, as long as they can articulate that, then I'm open to the discussion.
Okay. All right, James. Thank you. All right. Okay. We'll be right back. Final quarter. Rob Snow Show. City News.
When you've lost your breasts, you've sort of lost part of yourself. And then all at once you're losing your hair. You don't know who you are anymore. You want to feel like yourself again. So I think that the store, a mastectomy store, is essential because you've lost your identity. And then all at once you're looking for a wig, you need a headscarf, you need a camisole. There's nowhere to go, there's no one to talk to. This should be essential because there are more and more women that are getting breast cancer. I think it's 1 in 6. They're becoming younger. I have a client that's 18 years old. And where do they go? They need a place like this that the women that work there understand. They know what you're going through. It's changed quite a bit. Our hours are different. We're now open from 10 to 5. We're not as busy as we were. A lot of women are afraid to go out. They're afraid that maybe there are more people in the store. So that's why I try and let them know you are alone. There's absolutely nobody in the store except you and I. If there is a woman that she's very afraid, I will lock the door to make sure nobody else comes in. I'll put a sign back in 10, 15 minutes. That reassurance. Before we would have 4, 5, 6 people in the store. We didn't have to turn anybody away. Now we do. Some clients do leave and they're upset because they're in the store. They said, we drove 20 minutes and now we're not allowed in the store. And I try to make them understand that there's somebody in here that's going through chemo or radiation. So that's sort of changed a lot, that we're not able to have more people in the store.
If we're talking about products, there's the bras that are adapted for mastectomy, the bathing suits that are adapted to mastectomy. We have camisoles as well, and post-surgery bras. And then we have, for women going through chemo, the wigs that we have a big selection in the store as well. We have scarves. Some women don't feel comfortable wearing a wig. They prefer to wear a scarf or a hat, so we have a huge selection of that as well. We offer compression garments as well. When you're going through a mastectomy, you might have lymphedema in your arms after a couple of years, and you have flare-ups. So we have the sleeves, the hand as well that can be covered. We show each other's our scar. We talk about the treatments, how we felt, and I guess that's what they're looking for here. That's what makes us special. We have an added value in this store. Besides everything that's in the store, that's a product that can handle any problem that a client might have. Me and Linda, we've been through. We know how it feels in our bodies.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Should read Corbella's column, Lucia Corbella in the Post today, The Gray Wave. Really good. Really good. The narrative in our politics, in much of our media coverage, seems to be once the pandemic is over, we must get on with the business of tackling the next great crisis, and that crisis is the climate crisis. I don't think that's the case. It may run counter to yours. The next great crisis has actually been with us for many, many years now. We just don't have politicians in Canada willing to face it head on. It is the state of the healthcare system. It's not the climate crisis, it's the healthcare crisis. Healthcare is in crisis. It's in the hallways of our acute care hospitals. It is the inadequate supports in the mental health care system. And it is in the horror show that has now been revealed in long-term care. And we are only going to pay more for this as the country grows older. And we now have a debt load in Canada. This is in the news today. There's a big news story about this. The debt load of Canada now is greater than the debt load of Greece. You heard that right. Bloomberg News reports this morning Canada's debt load is now heavier than the debt load of Europe's most famous basket case, Greece. Headline, Canada has one of the largest debt burdens among developed nations. Japan number 1, then Canada at number 2, and then Greece at number 3. And yet I read the news every day, and I see a lot of attention on climate change and the climate crisis and the climate emergency and carbon taxes and all this talk about building back better and resilience and all the hot buzzwords and phrases that are part of the climate change vocabulary. What I don't see is a lot of reporting about what Canadians have traditionally said was their top concern long before COVID-19, and that is the state of the healthcare system. Pollsters for years and years and years would do a poll. What is your number one concern, Mr. and Mrs. Canadian? And for years and years and years, the answer that kept coming back was healthcare. Healthcare. Maybe sometimes in tough economic times, like we're in now, jobs in the economy would steal the number one slot. But for years, decades, number one concern for Canadians, healthcare. Will it be there when I need it? How long will I have to wait in the ER? Why can't I find a family doctor? How long to wait for an MRI? How long will I wait for my surgery? Will I be able to afford my medications? How will I take care of my parents? Mental breakdown and I have nowhere to turn. Healthcare. When is any government going to try and confront this? I thought the Canadian healthcare system was part of the Canadian identity, something we're supposed to take great pride in. And yet here we are building back the latest political fad. Climate change has seized the day for governments and now opposition leaders alike. When all of this is over, the pandemic, we're on to the next challenge, and it's fighting climate change, says who? When the Prime Minister meets with the premiers, all of them in unison, they want to talk about health care, and Mr. Trudeau doesn't want to talk about it at all. The premiers, regardless of political stripe, begging the federal government for more money for health care. And what they get back from this Prime Minister is crickets. They get more money for transit, lots of money if you want to plant trees. Not so much for nurses or private rooms in long-term care. I mean, what is a bigger priority for most Canadians? You know, I've seen this movie before, and it was forgettable the first time around. I'm not keen on seeing the sequel after 15 years of Liberal government in Ontario. And an Ontario government that went all in on all things green. And what was sacrificed? Healthcare. Hospital budgets frozen. Long-term care completely neglected. Starved of funding, so badly needed to keep up with the changing demographics in this country. And you know what? Not much has changed, and here we go again. Anything that moves, call it green. The government will throw money at it. In the meantime, when it comes to health care, hold up in this country is a great source of national pride. Every year, the healthcare system is asked to do more with less. We have Minister Freeland doing a news conference in a half an hour. She vows to spend $100 billion. How much will be made available to hire nurses, rebuild a shattered long-term care system, train more family doctors, build more hospitals, offer more home care? Any of it or none of it? I think we all know the answer. The clock is ticking, ladies and gentlemen. The alarms are already going off. When it comes to healthcare in some parts of this country, the alarm has already gone off. New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Quebec. It will be Ontario's turn soon enough. As Corbella writes in the Post today, we're getting older. We're living longer. And that means there's no escaping it. If you want to maintain publicly funded universal health care, governments are going to have to find the money from somewhere. Kevin Page, you remember him? He is with the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy at the University of Ottawa. Forecasted recently that provincial governments will have a revenue shortfall for healthcare of $20 billion by the year 2044. The National Institute on Aging says annual spending on long-term care will triple between now and the year 2050, from $22 billion a year to $70 billion a year. $70 billion a year. But the government's obsession is not about funding long-term care, despite the horrors revealed in this pandemic. Rather, it is obsessed by the year 2050 with decarbonizing the economy. The median age right now is almost 41 years old. Life expectancy is over 80. In the 1960s, it was 27, and life expectancy was less than 70 years old. By the year 2030, less than a decade from now, nearly 1 in 4 Canadians will be over the age. The plan to fund health care in the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. You want to talk about building back better with more resilient infrastructure? Please include health care. Making sure an 85-year-old woman doesn't have to share a wardroom in a long-term care home with 3 complete strangers. That is the challenge of our time. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101 and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 3 degrees. It's 0 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. We start with breaking news from the Toronto court. Alec Minassian has been found guilty of all 26 counts he faced. The man who admitted to planning and carrying out events on Yonge Street in Toronto in 2018 tried to say he was not criminally responsible for those crimes. The judge in the case, reading her decision, said she would not mention the accused's name since it was notoriety he was seeking. Judge Anne Malloy referred to him as John Doe throughout the 35-minute reading of the decision, finding him guilty. 10 counts of attempted murder. During the decision, the judge read out the names of all 10 killed, also the names and the detailed injuries of the 16 others. Alec Minassian guilty on all 26 counts he faced from the Yonge Street killings. City News Time, 11:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Quite a bit of cloud for most areas today. May get some more flurries, though, as we work through the afternoon. A mild high, though, +2, becoming mainly clear tonight will drop to -14. It's colder again. The high tomorrow just -6, but lots of sunshine tomorrow. For today,
-3, it's 0 in Smiths Falls. Latest COVID-19 numbers from the province show a drop below 1,000 for the day. There are 958 new cases, and those results come from 52,600 tests. There are also 17 more deaths in Ontario. Of the new cases in Ottawa, 57, 8 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 5 in Renfrew, 13 in Eastern Ontario. Now, one of the new cases in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark is one of the COVID variants. The health unit reporting this morning it is the first case in the community of a COVID variant. So what is the plan for the latest vaccine in Canada? AstraZeneca. Health officials are under pressure to craft a strategy to get that shot into people's arms before it expires. That's amid ongoing uncertainty about exactly who should get it. 500,000 doses of the shot set to arrive in our country, and the clock is ticking. Here's the latest from Jamie Pulfer.
AstraZeneca doses arrive in this country as more than half of those 500,000 doses will expire in less than a month. Health Canada has approved the vaccine for all adults, but the federal government's National Advisory Committee on Immunization is advising against giving it to seniors. The provinces are following that advice, meaning those under 65 could benefit.
It can be used very quickly in a number of places, for mass vaccination clinics, in some of our correctional facilities, for example, ultimately.
Ontario Health Minister Christine Elliott offers some examples, but no clear plan yet, something she says will be announced soon. AstraZeneca is the third vaccine coming into the fight against COVID in Canada. The one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine is still waiting on Health Canada approval, which could happen soon. I'm Jamie Pulfer.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will provide a COVID update to the nation shortly with vaccines and support for science and business. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
When the Prime Minister takes the mic, he'll be joined by the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Innovation, and I'm told that he will be making an announcement about investing in innovation, science, and research. But his media availability comes on a day when we're receiving 500,000 AstraZeneca vaccines, the first shipment since the shot was approved for use in Canada last week. In total, our country is receiving just under 950,000 shots this week, the most in terms of deliveries throughout this pandemic. So expect vaccines to be a topic in focus as well. Now, we could also get some more information on the extent rent subsidies for businesses. Lobby groups have been pushing for details on just how much businesses will be getting. And with the finance minister there, you know that's going to pop up. There are also questions about the bill to enact some measures from the fall fiscal update, which still haven't been passed through the House of Commons. The opposition has been holding it up. So expect Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland to try and put some pressure on the other parties to pass those supports for Canadians. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hey, let's get the update from up the line. Bruce McIntyre's here from the Eganville leader. Good morning, Bruce. Good morning.
Bruce, how are you, Rob?
I'm good. It's great to hear from you. What's the latest with COVID in Renfrew? There seems to be an uptick in cases.
We had a bad week. That's our first really bad week. Some young people were doing a little unsocial gathering when they weren't supposed to down in the Renfrew McNabb Braeside, and unfortunately, that resulted in quite a few positive cases coming out of that. And it's not just the young people themselves, but they've now caused some businesses to have people that had to force temporary closures of the businesses until they figure out exactly what is what the state is. We have 2 people in intensive care, which is something we're not used to.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they're here. I know that Renfrew sends their intensive care patients down to Ottawa. They're not just equipped for that right now, and it's just confusing. You know what? I'm glad you're sitting, Rob, because confusion is the word.
Confusion is the word. Okay, all right.
So
okay,
we're no different than everybody else, and it's reflecting now from the elected officials are starting to feel the heat. The 17 mayors and reeves that sit around the council table, they don't know what's going on. They're getting calls from their constituents constantly, and they're just saying, you know as much as I do. So they're getting frustrated. They're getting embarrassed. So it's starting a little ripple effect.
Is that more on the vaccine side, Bruce?
The vaccine side, yeah.
Okay.
And Dr. Cushman he's made it quite known that he has no problem at all going from green to orange to red very quickly if the situation calls for it. So he's not one to pull his punches. If he says he'll do it, he'll do it. So we're hoping that the Arnprior McNabb outbreak will be the last major one we see. And last week we were talking about Barry's Bay being the hotspot, and this week it's Arnprior McNabb.
Okay, Arnprior McNabb Braeside. And the last time we had Dr. Cushman on the line, he was talking about Barry's Bay. Now, when you say young people, are you talking about University College? Are you talking about high schoolers? Do you know?
Healthy doesn't give out the exact demographics, but we've heard through the grapevine there's young people that are late teens, early 20s. That's what we've heard.
Okay, all right.
So it's
house parties, house party kind of thing.
Yeah, social gatherings.
Social gatherings. Yeah, okay.
So we're trying to get gold at Fort Knox. It just ain't coming.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, confidentiality.
Right, so. Right. But this, this idea of anti-maskers and all of this kind of stuff. Is there a lot of that in Renfrew County? What's your?
It was in throughout the county. There's a little individual rebels that are we did have a little gathering the last 2 weeks, actually 3 weeks ago now, up in the bay, up in Barry's Bay.
Yeah.
And there's up to 24 of them having their mask off in front of stores, protesting the mask, and why can't businesses be open? Why is there a lockdown? Why is there a lockdown? And
right.
They cut their mask off. And it's just, the reason they came to Barry's Bay, Rob, they were going to go to Kimloo, but there's no intersection with a set of lights, so they came up to Barry's Bay.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay.
I'm not kidding you. There's no lights here. We got to go somewhere else.
Okay. Now this is interesting. On the vaccine front, they're starting to feel the heat. The political leaders.
They are, and that's when you'll see a little more movement. I'm not sure what exactly they can do.
They can't do anything.
It's based on supply and demand. We don't have the supply. There's a big demand, but there is no supply. Thank you, our federal government. Anyway,
right? But it's interesting because when I spoke with Dr. Cushman, he said the impression that I got from that conversation was we're not a hotspot. So
we're not.
We've done everyone in long-term care with at least one dose. Although the residents, just the residents, not the staff. I haven't had an update since then. But Toronto needs them more than we do. Ottawa needs them more than we do. So we the Valley's just not a priority.
we actually did have staff at Marion Hill Long-Term Care Home, so staff did receive the Pfizer dose, and that was, and as well, Barry's Bay, the Valley Manor, some staff up there have received it. But overall, it's been slow to come in for our first responders and our frontline workers.
Right. So when it starts to get rolled out, have they even told people, like, this is where you're going to go and whatnot? Or?
No, that's being planned right now. They have Dr. Cushman along with the Director of Emergency Service, Mike Nolan, and others are working on a system. It's going to be similar to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the Renfrew County Virtual Triage Center. And it may be not just one model, it may be a couple of models that they're going to find what's best for the county, because we have, unlike the cities, we have a very large aging population. And that's one of the reasons why our numbers are so low. Even though they're the most vulnerable, they're not going out. They're staying in the house. They are not going to any Costco or anything like that. That's why our numbers are down. So the challenge for the vaccinators is to get them into a central unit where they're already hesitant to go out. They know it's for a good cause. They know it's going to help them, but getting them out of the house to actually come get a vaccine is difficult. So we may be looking at a model where we have paramedics going into their homes to do it. It's not the most efficient way, but that's one thing they're studying. They're looking at having 5 centralized little pop-up centers, for lack of a better word. Yeah. But these are all in the work. I mean, it's all dependent on when we get the vaccines. I mean, I was frustrated yesterday. I was home, I was watching Joe Biden, his press conference, and just the efficiency is like a well-oiled machine. Yes, there's some hiccups, but boy, talk about amazing compared to what we're doing. It's night and day. It really is.
Okay. I want to talk about a story I have on page 3 of the paper. Eganville leaders out today, by the way. $2, best $2 you'll ever spend. Headline, longtime Tory volunteer demands MP Gallant resign. Cheryl Gallant, it's your story. Can you tell me a little bit about it? I think this is going to be an interesting one to see what happens here.
Bill Beecham is a longtime Tory supporter because he's a progressive conservative. That's what he considers himself.
Right.
Anyway, he had to leave the board a couple of years ago due to health issues. He did everything from packing up the garbage, everything else. And he said, you know what, I have no malice towards Mrs. Gallant. I've worked with her. I have no axe to grind, but enough's enough. I mean, he was really disgusted by the statement, and she said all liberals, she basically painted all liberals with the same brush when they want to have normalized sexual relations with children. And what, he's been through the ringer with all the comments she's made over the years, but what really frustrated him was she's been there 20 years. For goodness sake, she should be thinking about her legacy and her elder statesman role that she can play, and instead she's going to a group of impressionable students at Queen's University and just barking off all these insane theories, controversial theories, and all that was missing really was a tinfoil hat to be passed around the students. And he has enough is enough. He's also written a leader, Mr. Otoole, and he's very disappointed. He knows Mr. Otoole has a lot more bigger fish to fry than Mrs. Gallant, but he says the least he can do is send me a note. And he didn't want to go public. It really took some. I guess he feels very sad about this. He didn't want to do this publicly, but enough's enough. He's called the MP's office, and he said it's out of respect for her because she's given 20 years. I want to hear from her what she was thinking, what the rationale was, or perhaps an apology, and they haven't got back to him yet. He said, you know what, forget it. I've only got a few years left on this earth, and I'm going to make a letter to them.
Okay. All right. So another frustrated conservative. Yeah, I'm assuming she's the nominated candidate there. She has every intent to run again, right?
Yes, she does. Yeah. And she is the longest-serving female member of the Conservative Caucus. She's been there 20-plus years.
Okay.
So she was way back to Canadian Alliance when there were 2 MPs. Yep. That's where we are. It embarrasses. I mean, we've talked about this.
Yeah. And if she runs, she'll win in a landslide again, right?
Yeah.
So,
I've got an update for you. The rock thrower, the water tank thrower on the highways.
Yes. Highway 17. There was. Debris being, boulders and whatnot being left over Highway 17 and county roads, right? So what happened?
So he's 21 years old. Name is Joshua Boyce from Eganville, and he has a pretty long, colorful history. Not only was he doing that, and the reason he was doing it, Rob, he was in the interview, he was bored. He wanted to see what the cars would do when they came upon these objects on the road. That was his reasoning.
Got to be kidding me. He was
I'm not
bored.
kidding you. He was bored. And he had some friends that were with him at the time, and one friend got very angry. Turn this car around. We're going back to pick those pylons up. And when they brought the acquaintances in for an interview, it was the Rat Pack. They just jumped ship, and they said, you know what, this is a guy. It was unfortunate. And he also, to show you how bored he is, one night he went around back in May last year throwing fireworks around. Well, one of the fireworks hit a planter on the side of a house, erupted in flames, caused almost $20,000 in damage. He could have killed somebody, along with putting stuff on the roadway. So he'll be having, again, we were shocked, not surprisingly, that he was let go of the bail, that he got to go home with his mom. He's back home in Eganville. It's just the lives that he could have endangered through all these boredom stunts is very frustrating. I know the crown attorney, I was speaking to him yesterday, Mr. Richardson, he is not pleased. But there you go.
What is the internet access like in Renfrew County? Spotty?
That's the sound of AOL. You got mail.
Really? Okay. This is a big deal to try and expand broadband outside the cities, right? So what's the latest on this for Renfrew County?
There is a group called the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. It's basically made up of 13 Eastern Ontario counties people, and they're applying for a fund from both the provincial and federal levels of government for a $1.6 billion program to get this thing finally put the nail in the coffin and get it done. What they've done in the past, they've done very good work, but it's always been piecemeal. They'll have three or four contracts. They want one. They want one contract to come in and just get it done. So that is the basic background to their grant. It's been submitted, and all they can do is, it's not just for us, it's for all of Eastern Ontario. There are dead zones, Rob, everywhere.
Oh, sure.
I mean, if you live up on Lake Clear near Eganville, you're using, and the prices for the satellite dish is outrageous, and it doesn't work half the time. So they are looking at some way to get internet up here. When I first moved here, I heard that back in 2001. We're got to get some internet. We've got to get it going. 20 years later, still hearing the same thing, but it's improved.
All right. Always great to hear from you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, and have a great day.
Yeah, from up the line, the Eganville leaders, Bruce McIntyre. We're right back on City News.
The location is unique. See, it's open, and we have large windows. You can sit down and you can look outside. And this scene is not many scenes like that in Ottawa anymore, with the high buildings. And we have the train station to the west of us. We have the train yards. To the south, we have Saint Laurent Shopping Center, not far from here. And OC Transpo, not far from here. And the train, the light train, again, is not far from here. You can find breakfast. The breakfast, it was 7 or 8 years ago, it was one of the best five restaurants in Ottawa, one of the best, one of breakfast in Ottawa. 7 or 8 years ago, it was in the Citizen. And our club sandwich is voted by customers the best in town. And the pea soup, too, is voted the best in town. We sell, we make pizza, we make Italian food, Lebanese dishes. Many customers describe it as it has the prices of the 60s, very reasonable prices. And the food, many say the best in town, not me. Many customers say that. It was a shock. It was a shock. And we went from doing well to barely doing very little. We relied heavily on the takeout, and the takeout was not that much. There was some. I hear from many customers that they are willing to come and sit inside. They're not afraid of the spread, as long as we wash our hands, sanitize everything, and wear your mask and keep the distancing. Most or all our customers are okay with that. So they are against the lockdown, They are supporting us a lot. And if it wasn't for the community loyalty, we wouldn't be here today. So I have to thank them for their support so far. It's been great.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The developing story this morning is the conclusion of the Toronto van attack trial, with the verdict today and coming down less than an hour. Trader Alec Manassian has been found guilty of 10 counts of first-degree murder and 16 counts of attempted murder for that van attack, with the judge saying that Manassian's autism spectrum disorder did not impair his abilities, were morally wrong when that attack took place back in April of 2018. Jessica Bethel joins me now for some reaction to the conclusion of this case. She is a director at Autism Ontario. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
Great.
How are you feeling upon hearing this news?
So we were able to listen to it as a distant group today, and there really are no winners. We're glad that there is a guilty verdict, but I think it's sad for everybody involved. So that's kind of where we're all at right now today.
Okay. The defense, novel, very hard to find even case law in Canada for a defense like this, let alone internationally. I'm not criminally responsible because I've been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. What did you think of that as a legal defense?
We were absolutely flabbergasted. We were really, really upset. We think the damage has been done, unfortunately. We're very happy that that was not accepted as a legal defense. But there is real concern from the ASD community. We thought we were making progress, but unfortunately, if you listen closely to Justice Molloy this morning, she said the legal definition of ASD meets the criteria to be classified as a mental disorder, which actually has the potential for future instances of autism as a defense. So we really are concerned that there's a future for further stigmatization of people with autism. So although there were some really good points, and we're really happy overall, there is a real concern that this defense will be used in the future, unfortunately.
You believe now that it's been tried once, it will be tried again?
There's a big possibility that
right.
will happen, and a real concern, yeah.
I kind of call it the autism made me do it defense.
Yeah. So it was refreshing, it was reassuring that she said, and this is something that in the earlier interviews that we had before the verdict, one of the things we said was a quote from Dr. Stephen Shore. He said, if he's met one person with autism, he met one person with autism. And Justice Molloy did a good job of articulating that today. So we really felt that she emphasized that you have to look at the case on an individual basis, and that's what she did. But if this defense is used in the future, I think that is what will happen. So they'll have to look at each case on an individual basis and determine, does the person have the cognitive ability to understand their actions?
Okay. Now, I want you, if you could, explain a little bit more your fear about re-stigmatization or the re-emergence of autism spectrum disorder carrying a stigma. Can you speak to that a little bit more, please? What you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think in the disability community, we've made significant gains over the past several years. I would say even in the past 10 years. We've really made a movement away from, in the past, people with autism often were institutionalized and things like that. So, residential settings have been, and we're really moving towards inclusion in a lot of schools, just within the community. And so this really just feels like a step backwards in some ways.
Right. That there would be this kind of forever this sort of taint, I think, that somebody with somebody who suffers with autism, or maybe suffers is not the right word, but has been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, would have the potential not only to have violent outbursts, but to commit mass murder.
Yeah, and it's very excellent job of articulating this, but autism does not make you a violent person. So his autism was not accepted as a defense. So that's kind of the silver lining in all of this.
What is your experience, for the uninitiated like me, who have not autism spectrum disorder or siblings or whatever the case might be, on the whole issue of someone on the spectrum being able to decipher what is right and wrong, morally right and morally wrong? What is your experience with that, Jessica Bethel? Do people with autism spectrum disorder struggle to understand what is right and what is wrong morally?
It's definitely not a part of the diagnostic criteria that one would need to meet. So it really doesn't fit. And this is why there was so much debate about that being used as a defense from the beginning of this trial. But again, autism is a spectrum disorder, so there is a wide range of abilities and developmental capabilities of each person with autism. So it's really difficult to make a generalization like that. But mental disorder is really not one of the characteristics. It's not one of the defining characteristics or diagnostic criteria that's even used. So mental illness is a completely separate category. It's not the same thing as autism.
Okay. And it just seemed to me, in advance of this verdict today, this perpetrator, Alec Manassian, seemed to be a high-functioning person, attended post-secondary school, got a job, and certainly had the wherewithal to plan and execute this horrific act.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Justice Malloy mentioned. She said he does not have any impairment in cognitive abilities. So I think that really played a role in the ultimate the decision.
Yeah. So a certain sense of relief, but it is coupled with sadness, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sad for his family. It's sad for the victims. Something I also just wanted to mention was that Justice Malloy mentioned that he did this for the notoriety, and she didn't mention his name at all throughout the entire reading of the verdict. So I thought that was quite, I just thought that was quite poignant that she did that, and we're hoping to name the victims instead. And in addition to those that died, she also detailed the significant life-altering injuries of all of those survivors. So the impact is far beyond just the death, but it also extends to people who have long-lasting life-altering injuries as a result. And so she focused on naming them instead, which I thought was really, really wonderful that she did that.
Okay. I thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you very much.
That is Jessica Bethel with Autism Ontario. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 3rd. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa, cloudy skies, a -2, overcast and 0 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. A Toronto area man's been found guilty on 10 counts of first-degree murder and 16 of attempted murder in the April 2018 Toronto van attack. 28-year-old Alec Manassian had admitted planning and carrying out the attack, but argued he should be found not criminally responsible for his actions due to his autism spectrum disorder. Justice Anne Malloy ruled this morning Manassian was fully capable of making a rational choice at the time and deliberately chose to commit mass murder. She refused to name Manassian in her decision and referred to him only as John Doe, telling the court notoriety was his motivation to commit the Health confirms 46 new cases of COVID-19. Out of 958 new cases across the province, there were 17 new deaths due to novel coronavirus in Ontario in the daily update. Elsewhere locally, Eastern Ontario reporting 13 new cases. Leeds, Grenville, Lanark reporting 9 new cases and has added 3 cases to the Monday totals. Renfrew County and District has 5 new cases. Today's numbers are out of over 52,000 tests. And the Leeds, Grenville, Lanark Health Unit says a confirmed case of a COVID variant has turned up in that region. Testing's being done to pinpoint which variant has emerged there. The health unit doesn't say where in the region the COVID variant was uncovered, but says it is the first case of a variant in its jurisdiction. I'm Sarah Buchan for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, so the Prime Minister is speaking right now, and the theme for his news conference, the Finance Minister, the Innovation Minister are supposed to be there as well. The theme is innovation.
Even if they can't leave their home. And after the year we've had, I think it's clear why that matters.
About innovation these days, we immediately think of vaccines. With regard to our unprecedented investment of $518 million for Canadian research through the Canadian Foundation for Innovation, we are stimulating efforts to manufacture vaccines in Canada. Through the Innovation Fund, a team of researchers at the CHU in Quebec and the University of Laval are working on a way to continue to accelerate the development and trials of vaccines here in Canada. This funding will support this work and that of other people across the country.
Is one of our best tools to beat this pandemic. That's why we've made historic investments in science and research to fight COVID-19. That's why, since 2015, we've funded domestic vaccine research, development, and manufacturing. And it's why we turned the page on the previous government's approach by instead fully supporting and standing with the science and researchers who keep us healthy and safe.
Over the past 5 years, we have made unprecedented investments in science and research. This pandemic reminds us why it's so important to do that. Reminds us also that we must never go back.
So a parting, a partisan shot at the previous government, the Harper government, the so-called anti-science government there from Mr. Trudeau. We'll be listening in. Again, the theme is science and innovation. We have made, quote, historic investments in science and innovation in the fight against COVID-19. So why don't we welcome our next guest, Amir Attaran, Associate Professor, University of Ottawa. Welcome back, Professor. Nice to hear from you.
How are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm well.
How would you just describe what you heard from the Prime Minister, that his government has made historic investments in science and research and innovation in the fight against COVID-19? How would you react to that, Professor?
Words. It's been sickening.
It's sickening?
We have not.
Okay.
Sickening. Because we are in the middle of a pandemic that is killing people in numbers that we have not seen in a century in a pandemic. And here's a Prime Minister forth meager investments in Canadian science To call those investments backwards is not too strong, touting them. Here's the fact. Canada has one of the lowest percentages of spending on scientific research OECD countries. We are cheap on our science spending. Obviously, for the Prime Minister to say, we've been investing since 2015 in vaccines, he did say that, raises the question of where are those vaccines in 2021? This government's approach is on communications. It's built on trying to look good, and it nauseates that we don't have the vaccines because the investment has been consistently too small.
Okay, Professor, we're just going to put you on hold because we're having a little trouble with the reception on your phone right now. And while you're on hold, the Prime Minister is speaking about the dosing right now. Doses expected to arrive in Canada.
Remain cautious to protect yourselves and others.
Just last June, I met Luc. He's the owner of Regimbal Awards and Promotions, a family business here in Ottawa. The first wave of the pandemic hit their business hard. But with the wage subsidy and rent support, they were able to rehire staff and keep their doors open. Well, 8 months later, and Luc's store is still going strong. In fact, they're even continuing to give back to the local fight against COVID-19 with their Stronger Together campaign. Through this great initiative, they're donating proceeds from their fabric face masks, tees, and hoodies to the Ottawa Community Foundation for the most vulnerable in the city.
Okay.
Across the country.
I'm really not sure what we're getting out of this news conference so far, other than government feel goods. But I think we have the professor on, and we have a better line now. Just before we reconnected, you were talking, Professor, about what you say is really a lack of investment in research, particularly into vaccines. I'm wondering if you could just maybe pick things up from there, maybe how Canada compares to some other countries.
Canada's spending on science and technology is one of the lowest in the OECD. That is the club of developed countries. We have not supported basic science into vaccinology to any considerable extent. We have not made use of the manufacturing facilities we already have. You might remember the Prime Minister a few months ago saying we don't have vaccines in Canada and we'll be slow because there aren't manufacturing facilities here. That's a load of hooey. We do have manufacturing facilities. The government simply didn't utilize them. And this, I have to say, torrent of disinformation from the government about how we are making big investments when in fact we're one of the stingiest countries in the developed world for science, how we don't have manufacturing facilities when actually we do. It's really disturbing to me.
Okay. On that point, Professor, I just jump in there because Minister Champagne is supposed to be at this news conference as well. He's the new innovation minister, and when this is put to him, he talks about scale that we the facilities that we have in Canada, we wouldn't be able, or they weren't equipped for some of the new technology like the mRNA technology. What would you say to that?
That's half true. We have the ability to make mRNA vaccines, and very, very few countries do. You can count them on the fingers of one hand. But for the more conventional vaccines, the ones that you're hearing about from Oxford and AstraZeneca or from Johnson & Johnson, excellent vaccines. Those we do have the facilities to make. And in fact, at the end of 2019, just when we discussed, it was the end of 2019, Canada had more capacity to manufacture that kind of vaccine than did Great Britain. But you see what's happened. Britain invested in building up its capacity in 2020, and now they have one of the best vaccination programs in the world. We did not. And I know government received it, build up its manufacturing capacity and ignore it because that advice came from, among other people, me, straight to the Prime Minister's office. On it. We are left scrambling for vaccines. This government scientific government I've ever come across. And I say that having lived and worked in the United States, in Europe, in the United Kingdom, and other places. We are really backwards.
Let me ask you this, because certainly, Mr. Trudeau, in 2015, Canada turned a corner when it came to investments in science and believing in science, and we weren't anti-science, and the previous Harper government wanted to defund science. That was on the on Twitter yesterday from Hetty Fry, that the Harper government defunded science. And I'm not here to carry water for Stephen Harper, whatever the case might be. What I want to know is this idea that there's been some kind of big turnaround, massive investment since the Harper years. Would you say that's true?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, percentage of economy, we spend on scientific research now than we did 20 years ago. Less. So, and that's before Harper. Look, no doubt Harper was savage on science funding, but the Liberals have not done a great deal to restore it. And even if they had restored it 100% and went beyond, they'd have to go to reach the levels of science funding in the U.S. I mean, a good example is that the health research, the health and medical research budget in the United States per capita is about 4 times what it is in Canada. We're not talking a small difference. We're talking an enormous difference of several fold. So, an extra 10%, 5% are there in Canada, while it's welcome, it doesn't really put us up there with the world's best.
Okay. Professor Attaran, I also want to ask you what you think about this idea finally most vaccines for as long as 4 months, with the idea being to get as many first shots into as many people as possible. Just quickly on that one, what do you think about that plan? British Columbia is going to do that. Sounds like Ontario is going to do that too.
Look, it's so attractive and so scary at the same time. Attractive because you reach more people with one dose, and we know that one dose confers quite a lot of protection, although not all the protection you can get. On the other hand, if you have a bunch of partially vaccinated people running around, and that is the plan, is to just partially vaccinate them, are you creating the circumstances where you are optimally evolving new, more dangerous variant virus? And the answer to that could well yes. So we may be settling on a strategy that provides a quick payoff, but at the expense of evolutionarily selecting more dangerous viruses for the future. Promising and terrifying both.
Okay. Professor, I thank you for your time this morning, sir. Thank you again. 11:44 here on the Rob Snow Show. We didn't even talk about Texas. Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, Republican, might want to run for president someday, announced yesterday that as of next week, it's going to be back to normal for Texas as of Wednesday of next week. So I did some comparison kind of shopping this morning, if you will, just in case you want to hop on a plane. Are you allowed to do that? And head to the Lone Star State. Texas, population, 29 million people live in Texas. 38 million people live in Canada. The GDP of Texas is the same as the GDP of Canada. The economy of Texas is the same size as the economy of Canada, $1.9 trillion. Texas basically back to normal for, I wonder, part of me shakes my head in disbelief that they're even doing this, that they're, as of Wednesday of next week. You could argue it's reckless. Part of me is envious as well that they're moving in this direction. Texas ranks second. This is according to the Bloomberg Vaccine Tracker, comparing Texas to Canada, where they are in their vaccination programs. Texas ranks second among all U.S. states, behind only California, in total doses administered of vaccinations. 6 million doses administered. 16% of the Texas population has received at least one dose. 7% of the population has received 2 doses. The state of Texas is administering an average of 165,000 doses a day. 165,000 doses a day. Canada trails the state of Texas in all of those categories, according to the Bloomberg Vaccine Tracker. Canada has now done just shy of 2 million doses in total. Since December 14th, 2 million doses in almost 3 months, 1.99 million. 2.6% of the population of Canada has received one dose. Only 1.4% of the population has received 2 doses. Canada is averaging 58,000 doses a day. Doses per 100 people in the population. The number in Texas is 20.5. The number in Canada has moved now above 5 for the first time, 5.18. 5.18. Texas wide open. Canada, not so much. This is the
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great. Our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Now donations, they travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Ottawa Sun City Hall columnist, love saying that, Sue Sherring, back on the Rob Snow Show on City News. Good morning.
I love hearing it, Rob.
Now, here's what I have to ask you. A nearly 12-hour meeting of the Finance and Economic Development Committee. Did you sit through it all?
Well, this is confession time. No,
I did not. That's okay. I know I don't blame you at all. I don't blame you. That
really
is
went on, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I didn't watch any of it, but
well, I watched much of it, but I mean,
okay.
You know, it's they really get into the minutiae of stuff, which I know is their job, and I suppose I should be happy that they do. Especially when you can't, you know, when you're. It's one thing when I used to love going to city council and city committees, but you get to like talk to other people and get their take on it, and it's far more interesting. I am finding it increasingly hard, I suppose, as a testament to how I'm coping with COVID. It's harder and harder to just listen on the radio or on the
Zoom or whatever.
I never get tired of listening to you on the radio.
No. Oh, God bless you.
It's very hard to listen just on the speaker.
Yeah. That is a marathon. But you know, this is the way the mayor likes it, of course, is because he can say, and he's always said, I want the heavy lifting done at the committee level so that when it comes to city council, we've looked at it 8 ways from Sunday, right?
Yes, but he's also not a big fan of long meetings. No, but he's not. And I don't blame him. I mean, because people get... I'm being very judgmental. Like, these people are doing their jobs and they believe they're doing the right thing. But honestly, if I don't really understand why the agenda was that heavy if it was going to last 12 hours. You know, I think a lot of people would have preferred, you know, dividing that up, maybe, you know, putting it over. Why does it all have to be done in one day? I really don't. And I don't think it's good for democracy because I think, you know, if we're...
But to this point, and I actually wanted to ask you about this. It came across my mind just the other day. In my very early days when I used to be dispatched the odd time to Ottawa City Hall to, say, cover a City Hall issue as a news reporter. Things I used to really like was actually cornering the councillor or talking to a councillor staff member, especially, you know, during a meeting when they're, it's not their turn to talk, but they may have a few minutes and you kind of like, hey, can you come on over here? I really want to talk to you. So, you know, you kind of corner somebody and you get the real story, you know. You can kind of work the corridors, so to speak.
Well,
it's harder to do that now. If you're a news reporter in this virtual world, you just can't kind of pull somebody aside, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah. And, I mean, you know, aside from the fact that, so if you're in like a group setting at the end of a committee meeting or end of council, you know, we would always have scrums.
Yeah.
But I always would do that, pull people aside, even if I didn't have any burning question. It's just good to connect personally.
Yeah.
And that is all gone. And I'm finding, now that I'm back writing for The Sun, that's like a real detriment to me because I used to, I mean, I love schmoozing. You know that. I just love talking to people and...
Yeah. And hosting a show like this, I mean, I haven't had a guest in this studio in almost a year.
Yeah.
Everyone I've interviewed has been over the phone. We have not had a live guest in the studio in a year. And when it would come to, say, having a city council panel or the mayor come in, or, you know, I'm not telling stories at a turn here, but you really would look forward to kind of that 5 minutes before you actually do the on-air interview and the few minutes after when you get a chance to talk with people. And it's, you know, some of it is in the vault and, you know, whatever the case, off the record or whatever the case might be. Yes. But, you know, that's when you...
in the vault because it sounds really important.
Yeah. But, you know, you do kind of get honest opinions, I will say, or inside stories, or you understand a great deal better some of the internal dynamics that are going on. And you get a sense of how people are really feeling and doing. And right now in this, as a reporter, I always call myself a broadcaster, not a reporter or journalist, but it's a lot harder to do now because you can't do a lot of that stuff over Zoom. Or
it's a lot harder to get good stories that are your own.
Yeah. I really enjoyed your column this week, how you talked about what it was like growing up and how your parents, it sounds like a very traditional white Canadian family that you had growing up, right?
Very traditional.
And that as you were growing up, years on, right? And I think that's what a lot of us are who are not BIPOC, you know, that's kind of part of the awakening, right, of the last year or so that we're grappling with and kind of have to acknowledge. But you had a chance to do an acting sergeant with the Hate and Bias Crime Unit, Ali Togrol, I believe is the name, right?
He was so good.
He was good. Okay, yeah. And what did he tell you about this 57% increase in hate crimes? Is it because of recognition, or maybe this idea that we're going to take it more seriously now, that people are more willing to come forward and actually report this stuff, Sue?
I think it's sort of all those things, although certainly COVID is playing a role because people are crazy enough to blame people of Asian descent, which, you know, is clearly ridiculous, but part of those numbers is because of that. And I think, and we didn't get into this, but I wouldn't be surprised if people's I'm feeling crazy, other people are feeling crazy, but they take it out